Today is Monday, September the 16th, and if you were looking at your Twitter this morning, I did post a video this morning before the market opened to sort of to catch up on the 10 days that I was away on vacation. And in that video, I thought that I was likely going to do a lot of selling today, and that's what I did. I'm now up to just short of 70% cash. I'm very worried about some of the things that I'm hearing about the market, about the economy, about the threat of problems with oil and ensuing possible attacks on another country, and just general instability. And what I saw in the market today didn't change my mind on anything. We saw relatively good volume in the Dow, very good volume in the NASDAQ, and your typical relative volume in the S&P 500. And we saw all of them open down from the previous day. So here's the previous day. And they just continued to drift further down. In the case of the NASDAQ, some bouncing and finishing flat but down. And the S&P 500 opened up down and finished off at the same place. So there was no hesitation in the market. No buyers were stepping in. Advancers and decliners were flat. There's another thing that I look at, which is the, it doesn't show up on my other chart anymore because the market is closed. But anyhow, that takes us to a stock market breadth, which we saw last week while I was away, hitting the overbought line and pulling back. And we're going to see it tomorrow at exactly the same place. So we are in a position where we're likely to head downwards. If you look at any other time that we've spent in the overbought position, and if I could expand this, you'd see that there's several days in here, but we don't normally hang around there. Here we did, but it's not as congested as it was last week, and we came down. It's unusual to see us hit this point and to keep on moving through. That happened at the beginning of the year simply because we had such a big drop in the fourth quarter of 2018, so that the bounce back in 2019 was quite strong. But we don't see any instances where we hit the oversold line, pulled back, and then went right back up again. The momentum tends to continue down to at least zero. Notice that McClellan has posted something. Trump thinks he wants lower rates like Europe, but be careful what you ask for. So that's something you might want to look for on this site, mcoscillator.com. So now let's go back and let's look at the charts. And the S&P finished off down 10, which is this little doji indecision day. We still have this gap here that is the 1 week. Let's look at the 1 day. We've got this doji. We don't have a gap. The gap that was back, there's still a gap back here. Let me try to bring this back. Let's signals advanced. Anyways, I'll put this behind the candles when it's not taking up your time. But I just think we're heading down to the 8 EMA at the very least. And this is almost flat. This is definitely flat. I just think we're going down there. That's my guess. So I'm going to put an arrow on the chart that says I believe we are going in that direction. Back here, when we started this at the beginning of September, I said we were generally going to trend up, and we had this little channel happening, which we ended up leaving, popping out of while I was away. So I'm going to take that channel out. I think now we are headed downwards. Apple had a stronger day than I expected. I sold my position in Apple. It was a small position. I won't be afraid to get back in again. It was held, stopped, it bounced on the 8 EMA. Friday, it found support on the 8 EMA. Today it opened up, gapping up, but on the 8 EMA and popped. Now the Ichimoku says that Apple has room to run in the future, but is going into a period of the 50 is moving up, the 200 is moving up, the 8 is moving up. Apple may continue just to move up ever so slightly and achieve its previous high of 233.47. And if you can see in Ichimoku terms, we're over the 78.2. So we might come back to test the 78.2, but it looks like Apple is headed to 233.47, but I'm still not holding the stock. Caterpillar had an okay day, finished up at the top end of its range. It is going to head up to resistance on this gap. Look where it got support on the Chiku span. It came down and got support on the 200. So what do we say here? We're going to put this little marker right here, so we remember tomorrow. We're going to take a look and see if this was a valid support of the Chiku span on the 200. But I think Caterpillar is got the opportunity to move sideways and then upwards, and that's what I'm saying there. So why did I sell? I sold more than half my position. I just wanted to take profits, and there's nothing wrong with that, because from a point of view of where I wanted to be at the end of the year, I'm already there. So I wanted to hold on to the profits. Last year, I got screwed in the fourth quarter, and that's just not going to happen again. I'm willing to give up a bit of profit if I'm nervous. Now, we said Caterpillar was going to go up. We said it was going to go down, get support on the gap, and move up, and that's what it did. Now I think we're still in the general trend of moving up, but we do have this flat cloud. So I'm going to change this to maybe slightly down, but further on out, I see Caterpillar as a good stock to own, but I'd like to own it when it comes back to the cloud, get support on the 200 or support on the cloud. GDX had a really nice day today, ended up at the top end of its range, but it finished up over where it was on Friday. It's in the cloud, but the general direction of the cloud is up. I'm calling for GDX to just show us some upwards motion. Maybe not that dramatically, but I'm looking for generally up direction on GDX. Apple, we didn't mark that, but I'm thinking Apple is generally going to take us in an upwards direction if the market doesn't get any shocks. WDC pulled back 2.5% today to catch support on the 8 EMA. Whirlpool dropped $1. I sold all of my Whirlpool. That was one of the stocks that I sold that I tweeted about. The trades that I did where I sold all of my Whirlpool. It paid its dividend today, which was quite nice. I sold a little bit more than half of my Caterpillar. I sold all of my AT&T. So let's go and look at AT&T. We had a down day, but we did get support again on the 8 EMA and rejection pretty darn close here to this gap. So I was away when it hit this gap. If we'd been looking at it, I would have said that we would have had resistance on the gap, because that's what I think gaps do. They provide support and resistance. Eventually gaps get filled, but initially they provide support and resistance. I'm going to get rid of this upward trend. I just think that AT&T is still a good dividend stock. What is the dividend for AT&T today at its price today? Its dividend is 5.47%. That's attractive to people, especially on a pullback. If it gets back to if it goes any lower, the dividend is just going to increase and make the stock more attractive. I would like to buy it back. I sold it at a value of $37.41. It's just a couple of cents lower than where I sold it. I'd like to buy it. There's my sold mark. I'd like to buy it lower. Apple, my trade doesn't show up here, but I sold Apple at $218.29, which is lower than what it closed at. Not afraid to say that. I sold Whirlpool at $148.33. It closed above that. Again, I'm not afraid to say that. Remember, we had these two trend lines, right? We've been talking about these trend lines for weeks. This trend line, and then this trend line formed here, resistance here, and where are we today? That trend line again. So that trend line talks about going down. I think Whirlpool is going down over the short term. The Fed meets in a couple of days on Wednesday. They're expected to lower rates by 0.25%. That's already built into the market. We said Whirlpool, before I left, we said Whirlpool would come down. It didn't. It moved upwards, and quite sharply, to the point where I just felt that there was too much profit in the trade. I wasn't here on Thursday, but I told my wife on Wednesday when we were traveling, I said, God, if I was at home, I'd be selling. And I just wanted the market to hold on for a couple of days. It sort of did, but it didn't. And I lost a little bit, but I'm just glad that I'm at a position where I am with 70% profits. Snap, I said we wouldn't look at it until it got out of the clouds, so let's not look at it. That's the stocks that we typically follow. So what am I thinking about tomorrow? I think the market is still in a downward trend, and when the Fed announces on Thursday at 2 o'clock that they've lowered rates by 0.25%, I think the market is already expecting that. And the market is looking at other things now, which is what they're finding a little bit troubling. So thank you again for bearing with me, not being away on the vacation. I really appreciate your watching.